So this book is called The Curious Garden, and it's by Peter Brown. The Curious Garden by Peter Brown. There once was a city without gardens or trees or greenery of any kind. Most people spent their time indoors. As you can imagine, it was a very dreary place. You can pause it and maybe think about what you think that word dreary means. However, there was one boy who loved being outside. Even on drizzly days while everyone else stayed inside, you could always find Liam happily splashing through his neighborhood. It was on one such morning that Liam made several surprising discoveries. He was wandering around the old railway, as he did from time to time, when he stumbled upon a dark stairwell leading up to the tracks. The railway had stopped working ages ago, and since Liam had always wanted to explore the tracks, there was only one thing for the curious boy to do. What do you think he's going to do? Liam ran up the stairs, pushed open the door, and stepped out onto the railway. The first thing he saw was a lonely patch of color. Wildflowers and plants were the last things he had expected to find up there. But when he took a closer look, it became clear that the plants were dying. They needed a gardener. Liam may not have been a gardener, but he knew that he could help. So he returned to the railway the very next day and got to work. The flowers nearly drowned, and he had a few pruning problems, but the plants patiently waited while Liam found better ways of gardening. As the weeks rolled by, Liam began to feel like a real gardener, and the plants began to feel like a real garden. Most gardens stay in one place, but this was no ordinary garden. With miles of open railway ahead of it, the garden was growing restless. It wanted to explore. The tough little weeds and mosses were the first to move. They popped up farther and farther down the tracks and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. Over the next few months, Liam and the Curious Garden explored every corner of the railway. It's really expanding now. Look at that. Flowers popping up, shrubs. After spending his spring and summer and autumn with his garden, Liam's time on the railway was finally interrupted by winter. Heavy blankets of snow fell on the city that season, and for the first time since he'd become a gardener, Liam could not visit the plants. Rather than waste his winter worrying about the garden, Liam spent it preparing for spring. After 3 cold months, the snow finally began to melt, and Liam rolled his new gardening gear over to the railway. Winter had taken a toll on the garden. But thanks to Liam's planning, his handy new tools, and a little help from the sun, the plants soon awoke from their winter sleep. The garden has always wanted to explore the rest of the city, and that spring, it was finally ready to make its move. Once again, the tough little weeds and mosses set out first. They popped up farther and farther from the railway and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. The garden was especially curious about old, forgotten things. A few plants popped up where they didn't belong. Others mysteriously popped up all at once. But the most surprising things that popped up were the new gardeners. So just seeing that green really inspired people to get out and start to become gardeners as well throughout the whole city. Many years later, the entire city had blossomed, but of all the new gardens, Liam's favorite was where it all began. and just look at the difference between there and then thinking back to how it was, how the whole city was. They used the word dreary in the beginning. Right? Now, look at all that green. So there's a lot to think about here. And in the author's note, Peter Brown talks about a place right here in New York. Some of you may know it, called the High Line, which is in New York City, and you can check it out online. But it's really interesting to see that he was inspired by that area, which was an old railway track that, you know, there really wasn't, you wouldn't expect anything to be growing there. And now if you can visit it, it really is, it's beautiful, and it's really a nice place to go. So I want you thinking about Liam and what Liam did to help his larger community. So you can pause it now and talk about that. And then I also want you to think about maybe today or another day this week, going outside and thinking about what you could be doing without, I know we're, you know, not going close to other people, but what you can be doing with your family outside to help make your part of the community a more beautiful place for people to enjoy. What are some ideas you have? Okay. So think about that, discuss that with your family, and comment below, and enjoy.